Hey, it's Broomhead. Rough weekend for me. Memorial Day weekend is always one that's very personal. Most of you that have listened to the show for years understand that at the beginning of the war, which started in March of '03 under Bush 43, the invasion into Baghdad was in March. In May of '03, one of my younger brothers was killed in combat on Memorial Day. So this has a very significant day. It changed my life forever, as it has so many other families. I remember looking back at that day and thinking, before my brother was killed, you would see families of the fallen and say, wow, those poor people. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in that situation, being one of those families. And I didn't know what I would expect I would feel like, because I never really considered it was going to happen to us. But it was an overwhelming sense of pride in my brother and his service for this country. And the story that he told us, was told to us about that night, was his act of heroism. And it was everything that a big brother would want to hear about how his younger brother behaved and protecting the men that he served with. In total, there were 11 men that were hit in the firefight. My brother and another man named from Tampa, Florida, named Sergeant Quinn, Mike Quinn, were both killed that night. But in the time of the triage and before they evacuated my brother on a helicopter, the care he was taking for the men that were injured and the other men in his platoon, because he was 34 years old, a combat veteran of the first Gulf War under Bush 41, and was kind of the bigger brother to a lot of guys there. What I heard from the men that were with him that night was so encouraging. As an older brother, I wanted to tell that story and began to tell it in places, thinking I was going to be telling this big story of heroism. What I learned about the men and women that serve this country is that my brother's story, as heroic as it is, isn't unique, that it's what men and women in the military did for each other each day. And it brought to mind for me all of the other Gold Star families, especially the parents. The way my mother endured that, and the grace and the character and the strength that she showed through it, and reaching out to other mothers down the road who had lost their sons, was really something that was encouraging to me. So to the Gold Star parents, I will say to all of you this weekend, especially to the parents, I can't even imagine the loss that you suffered. Knowing what my mother endured, I wish each one of you peace, but also the embrace of the nation is something that happened for my family as well. That I felt as a brother of a soldier who was killed in the war, the country wrapped their arms around me and around my family, and we could feel the love and the respect and the admiration. So I would say to everyone on Memorial Day weekend, you should celebrate this in every American way possible, on the lake and picnics and parties and everything else. I would ask that you would set aside time to tell the younger people in your family, whether it's your children or others, about the sacrifice of the men and women in the military who paid the ultimate price throughout our history to keep us safe and to keep us free, carrying on the tradition of Memorial Day. I don't need Memorial Day to remember my brother's sacrifice. Memorial Day is created for families like yours. So I would ask that you would remember my brother, but remember all of the men and women who paid the price. Tell their stories and share with them the sacrifice of the American military. That would really make this a happy Memorial Day. And I'll be back on the air Tuesday. God bless.
Enhance your news coverage by following KTAR News on Instagram.